Commander Keth Varn stood at the observation window of the diplomatic vessel, his 4 eyes fixed on the planet below. The world was a nightmare made real. Crimson storms swirled across its surface, and even from orbit, he could see the massive volcanic eruptions that painted the atmosphere with ash and fire. This was Earth, the legendary death world that had produced the most feared species in the known galaxy. The Valorian commander had seen many things in his 200 years of service. He had fought in 3 wars, negotiated 17 peace treaties, and visited over 100 worlds. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Behind him, his crew whispered in fearful voices. They had all heard the stories about humans. "Commander," said his second officer, a young female named Sira, "the human delegation is ready to receive us." Keth turned from the window. His species was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and delicate features. The Valorians were known throughout the galaxy as thinkers and diplomats, not warriors. They had survived for 10,000 years by being careful, by avoiding conflict, and by never setting foot on a death world. Until now. "Tell them we are coming," Keth said. His voice did not shake, though his hearts were beating fast. A commander could not show fear to his crew. The shuttle descended through the violent atmosphere. Lightning struck around them and the small craft shook with each gust of wind. Keth gripped his seat with all 4 hands. On Valoria there was never weather like this. Their world was calm and peaceful, with gentle breezes and soft rains. This was chaos. They landed at a place called Geneva. The humans had chosen this location for the meeting because they said it was pleasant. Keth wondered what an unpleasant location looked like to these creatures. The shuttle doors opened, and Keth took his first breath of Earth air. It was thick and heavy, filled with strange smells that made his nose burn. The gravity was stronger here than on his homeworld, and he had to work harder just to stand straight. The sun was too bright, even through the clouds, and he had to squint all 4 eyes to see. A group of humans waited for them at the landing pad. They were shorter than Valorians, but much wider. Their bodies were thick with muscle, and they moved with a confidence that spoke of power. Keth had studied their anatomy before this mission. He knew that humans had bones that could withstand tremendous force, muscles that could tear through metal, and a cardiovascular system that could keep them fighting for hours without rest. But what truly frightened him was what he had learned about their history. Humans had spent their entire existence at war. They fought against their planet, which tried to kill them with floods, earthquakes, and diseases. They fought against the animals that shared their world, predators with fangs and claws and venom. And most terrifying of all, they fought against each other. The leader of the human delegation stepped forward. He was an older male with gray hair and scars on his face. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, and they seemed to look right through Keth. "Commander Varn," the human said, "I am General Marcus Stone. Welcome to Earth." Keth made the traditional Valorian greeting gesture, pressing 2 hands to his chest. "General Stone, the Valorian Council thanks you for this meeting. We have traveled far to speak with your people." The general nodded. "You came about the Kresh, I assume." The name sent a chill through Keth's body. The Kresh were a nightmare that had haunted the galaxy for 1,000 years. They were a species of pure destruction, moving from world to world, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply killed and moved on. "Yes," Keth said, "the Kresh have entered Valorian space. They will reach our homeworld in 3 standard months. We have come to ask for your help." General Stone's expression did not change. "The Valorians refused to join the Galactic Defense Alliance when we formed it. Your council said that military action was primitive and beneath your species." Keth felt shame burn in his chest. The general was right. The Valorians had been arrogant. They had believed that their intelligence and diplomacy would protect them from any threat. They had looked down on species like humans who still practiced war. "We were wrong," Keth said simply. "We were fools, and now our people will die unless someone helps us." The general studied him for a long moment. Then he turned and began walking toward a large building. "Come with me, Commander. There is someone I want you to meet." They walked through the human city, and Keth tried not to stare at everything around him. The buildings were massive, built to withstand earthquakes and storms. The streets were filled with vehicles that moved at dangerous speeds, and everywhere there were humans going about their daily lives as if living on this deadly world was normal. "You seem surprised," General Stone said. "I am," Keth admitted. "On Valoria we would never build cities like this. The risk would be too great." "Risk is part of life," the general said. "Humans learned long ago that we cannot avoid danger. We can only face it and overcome it." They arrived at a small building set apart from the others. It was simple and plain, with no decorations or signs. 2 soldiers stood guard at the door, and they saluted as the general approached. "Who lives here?" Keth asked. "The person who will decide whether humanity helps you." They entered the building and walked down a long hallway. At the end was a room filled with light. An old human sat in a chair by the window, looking out at a small garden. He was thin and frail, with white hair and wrinkled skin, but his eyes were bright and alert. "General," the old man said without turning, "you have brought our guest." "Yes, Admiral. This is Commander Keth Varn of the Valorian Council." The old man turned, and Keth saw his face clearly for the first time. It was covered in scars, more scars than Keth had ever seen on any being. One eye was artificial, glowing with a soft blue light. His left arm was mechanical, the metal visible where it connected to his shoulder. "Admiral James Chen," the old man said. "Retired officially, but some titles never really go away." Keth bowed respectfully. He had heard this name before. Admiral Chen was a legend, even among species that did not practice war. He was the human who had stopped the Kresh at the Battle of Proxima, the only being in galactic history to defeat them in open combat. "Admiral Chen," Keth said, "I am honored to meet you. Your victory against the Kresh saved millions of lives." The old man smiled, but there was sadness in it. "It cost millions of lives too. War always does." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, Commander. Tell me about your world and your people." Keth sat down, feeling the strange weight of this planet pressing on him. He began to speak about Valoria, about its peaceful cities and gentle people, about the art and science that his species had created over 10,000 years of civilization. And as he spoke, he watched the old admiral's face, trying to read the thoughts behind those ancient, battle-worn eyes. Admiral Chen listened without interrupting. His artificial eye glowed softly as it recorded everything, and his real eye never left Keth's face. When the Valorian finished speaking, the old man was quiet for a long time. "Your world sounds beautiful," Chen finally said. "A paradise by human standards." "It is," Keth agreed. "Or it was, before the Kresh came to our region of space." "Tell me about your defenses." Keth hesitated. This was the shameful part. "We have very few. The Valorian Council believed that war was a thing of the past. We invested in trade and diplomacy, not weapons. Our fleet consists of cargo ships and passenger vessels. We have no warships." "No warships at all?" "None. We dismantled the last of them 300 years ago." General Stone made a sound of disbelief. Admiral Chen held up his mechanical hand to silence him. "And your people, do any of them know how to fight?" "Fighting is not taught on Valoria. We resolve our differences through discussion and compromise." Admiral Chen stood slowly, his old bones creaking. He walked to the window and looked out at the garden. "Commander Varn, I am going to tell you something that may sound harsh, but I believe in honesty, especially in times of crisis." "Please speak freely, Admiral." "Your people are going to die." The words hit Keth like a physical blow. He had known this, of course. He had known it from the moment the Kresh were detected entering Valorian space, but hearing it spoken so plainly made it real. Even if humanity sends its entire fleet, Chen continued, we cannot reach Valoria in time. The Kresh move fast and your world is far from human space. By the time our ships arrived, the Kresh would already be there. Then there is no hope, Keth asked. The Admiral turned from the window. His scarred face was thoughtful. I did not say that. I said that sending a fleet would not save you, but there might be another way. What way? We teach your people to save themselves. General Stone stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, that is impossible. The Valorians have no military tradition. They have never fought a war. You cannot turn civilians into soldiers in 3 months. No, Chen agreed. You cannot turn civilians into soldiers in 3 months, but you can teach them to survive. You can give them the will to fight back. He looked at Keth. Commander, how many Valorians are there? 8 billion on our homeworld. Another 2 billion spread across our colonies. 10 billion beings. And the Kresh fleet that is coming for you has, what, a few 100,000 warriors. Our intelligence suggests approximately 300,000. Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. 10 billion against 300,000. Those are odds I like. But the Kresh are warriors, Keth protested. They have fought for generations. My people are scholars and artists. We would be slaughtered. Perhaps or perhaps not. The Admiral walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. Let me tell you something about humans, Commander. We were not always warriors either. Once long ago we were prey. We were small and weak with no claws or fangs or armor. The predators of Earth should have eaten us all. What happened? We refused to die. We learned to work together, to use tools, to think our way past problems. We discovered that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. Chen leaned forward, his eyes intense. The Kresh are strong, but they have a weakness. They expect their enemies to run or surrender. They have never faced a species that chose to stand and fight despite having no chance of victory. They do not understand what desperation can make a people do. You want to teach us to be desperate. I want to teach you to be human. The room was silent. Keth thought about his people, about the gentle Valorians who had never known violence. Could they learn to fight? Could they stand against the Kresh, the terror of the galaxy? How? He asked finally. Admiral Chen smiled. I will go to Valoria myself. I will teach your people what I know. I will show them that they have more strength than they realize. Admiral, General Stone said, you are 87 years old. The journey to Valoria would take 3 weeks. You are in no condition to travel. I am in the condition I choose to be in, Chen replied sharply. I have fought the Kresh before. I know how they think, how they attack, how they can be beaten. This knowledge must be shared and there is no time to train someone else. He looked at Keth. Commander, will your people accept help from a human? Will they listen to a warrior from a Deathworld? Keth thought about the Valorian Council, about their pride and their prejudice against species they considered violent. Then he thought about the Kresh, about the death that was coming for his world. Pride meant nothing when extinction was the alternative. They will listen, he said. I will make them listen. Admiral Chen nodded. Then we have work to do. General, arrange transport to Valoria, the fastest ship we have. Yes, Admiral. Stone saluted and left the room. Chen stood again, moving slowly to a cabinet against the wall. He opened it and pulled out a uniform, old and worn but carefully preserved. He held it up, and Keth saw the medals and ribbons that covered the chest. I thought I was done with this, the Admiral said quietly. I thought I had earned my rest. He looked at Keth with those battle-worn eyes. But some fights are too important to walk away from. 3 days later, the human warship Aurora broke orbit around Earth and set course for Valorian space. On board were Admiral Chen, a team of human military advisors, and Commander Keth Varn, who watched his new allies with a mixture of hope and fear. The humans spent the journey training. They woke early and exercised for hours. They practiced combat drills and studied tactical simulations. They prepared for a war that was not their own, against an enemy that posed no threat to Earth. Keth asked Admiral Chen why they would risk their lives for a species that had rejected their friendship. The old man thought for a long moment before answering. "Because it is right," he said simply. "Because your people deserve a chance to survive, and because I know what the Kresh do to the worlds they conquer. No species deserves that fate." "But you could die." Chen smiled. "Commander, I am 87 years old. I have survived 3 wars, 17 major battles, and more injuries than I can count. Death stopped frightening me a long time ago. What frightens me is doing nothing when I could help." When the Aurora finally emerged from hyperspace above Valoria, Keth looked down at his homeworld and felt tears in his eyes. It was so different from Earth. The sky was clear and blue, the oceans calm and peaceful. There were no storms, no volcanoes, no violence of nature. It was a paradise. And in 2 months, the Kresh would come to destroy it all. The Valorian council chamber was ancient and beautiful. Crystal columns rose to a ceiling painted with scenes of peace and harmony. Soft music played in the background, and the air smelled of flowers. It was everything that Earth was not. Admiral Chen stood before the council, his worn uniform a stark contrast to the elegant robes of the Valorian leaders. Behind him, his team of human advisors waited in silence. Beside him, Keth Varn translated his words into the Valorian language. "The Kresh will arrive in 63 days, Chen said. "They will come with hundreds of warships and thousands of landing craft. They will not negotiate. They will not accept surrender. They will kill every living thing on this planet." The council members whispered among themselves. Their faces showed fear and disbelief. They had spent their entire lives believing that violence was something that happened to other species, not to the enlightened Valorians. "What do you suggest we do?" asked High Counselor Pren, the oldest member of the body. "Fight back," Chen said simply. Silence fell over the chamber. Then, to Keth's horror, the council members began to laugh. Not the cruel laughter of mockery, but the confused laughter of people who had heard something impossible. "Fight," Counselor Prince said. "Admiral, we are not warriors. We do not know how to fight. We have no weapons, no military, no experience in violence." "Then you will learn." "In 63 days, impossible." Admiral Chen walked forward until he stood directly before the High Counselor. Despite his age and his injuries, there was nothing weak about him. His presence filled the room. "Counselor, I have spent my entire life doing impossible things. I have fought battles that could not be won and won them anyway. I have seen species that had no hope find the strength to survive. Nothing is impossible when survival is at stake." He turned to address the entire council. "Your people are not stupid. You are scientists and engineers, builders and creators. You have minds that can solve complex problems. War is just another problem to be solved." "But we are peaceful," another counselor protested. "It is against our nature to harm others." "Is it against your nature to protect your children, to defend your families, to save your civilization from extinction?" Chen's voice rose. "The Kresh will not care about your nature. They will not respect your peaceful ways. They will burn your cities, kill your people, and erase your culture from existence. Is that what you want?" The chamber was silent. Keth watched as the council members struggled with the Admiral's words. For the first time in their lives, they were facing a problem that could not be solved with discussion and compromise. High Counselor Pren stood slowly. He was old, even by Valorian standards, and his body was frail. But his eyes were sharp. "Admiral Chen, I have a question for you." "Ask." "Why are you here? Why would a human travel across the galaxy to help a species that rejected your people? What do you gain from this?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he reached up and touched the scars on his face, tracing the lines of old wounds. "I gain nothing," he said. "I am an old man with not many years left. I came here because I could not live with myself if I did not try. I came here because I know what the Kresh do, and I cannot let that happen to another world if there is any chance to prevent it." He looked directly at Pren. "I came here because courage is not about not being afraid. It is about being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. I want to give your people a chance to discover that courage within themselves." Pren was silent for a long time. Then he turned to his fellow council members. "We have spent 10,000 years building a peaceful civilization. We have created art, science, and philosophy that enriched the galaxy. And now we face a choice. We can die as we lived, peaceful and passive, or we can change, learn, and fight for our survival." He turned back to Chen. "Admiral, I do not know if we can become warriors, but I know that my people deserve a chance to try. The Council will support you. We will do whatever you ask." The work began immediately. Admiral Chen divided the planet into sectors and assigned human advisors to each one. He ordered the construction of defensive positions around major cities. He commanded the conversion of factories to produce weapons and equipment. And most importantly, he began training the Valorians themselves. The first days were hard. The Valorians were not used to physical labor. They tired quickly, complained often, and sometimes simply refused to continue. Their bodies were not built for the kind of exertion that humans considered normal. But Chen did not give up. He adapted the training to fit Valorian physiology. He found ways to use their strengths instead of fighting against their weaknesses. He showed them that their intelligence could be a weapon, that their problem-solving skills could be applied to combat. Slowly, things began to change. Keth watched as his people transformed. A young scientist named Lyra designed a new type of defensive shield based on principles that no human had ever considered. An elderly engineer named Tosk created weapons that used sound waves instead of projectiles. A group of students developed tactics that took advantage of Valorian speed and agility. The humans were surprised by how quickly the Valorians adapted. "They are learning faster than any species I have ever trained," Admiral Chen told Keth one evening. "Their minds absorb information at an incredible rate. What takes human soldiers months to learn, they master in days." "But will it be enough?" Keth asked. Chen was honest. "I do not know. The Kresh are formidable opponents. They have been fighting for centuries and they know nothing but war. Your people have been at peace for generations. The gap between you is vast. Then why do you continue?" The Admiral smiled. "Because hope is more powerful than certainty. Because I have seen miracles happen when people refuse to give up. And because your people have already surprised me many times, I believe they will surprise me again." As the weeks passed, the Valorians continued to grow stronger. They built fortifications around their cities and evacuation routes for those who could not fight. They manufactured weapons and trained with them until their hands stopped shaking. They learned to work together in units, to trust each other with their lives. And something else changed too. The fear that had gripped the planet began to transform into something different. Not confidence exactly, but determination. A willingness to face the coming storm rather than hide from it. Admiral Chen noticed the change. "They are becoming warriors," he told Keth. "Not the kind humans are, but their own kind. They are finding their own courage." "Is that enough to defeat the Kresh?" "No," Chen admitted, "but it might be enough to survive them, and sometimes survival is all that matters." The day the Kresh arrived, the sky turned red. Their ships emerged from hyperspace like a plague, hundreds of dark shapes blocking out the stars. On the ground, millions of Valorians looked up and felt their hearts freeze with terror. Admiral Chen stood in the command center that had been built beneath the capital city. Around him, Valorian officers monitored screens and coordinated forces. Beside him, Keth Varn waited for orders. "They are scanning the planet. a young officer reported. Identifying population centers, defensive positions, military concentrations. Let them look, Chen said calmly. They will see what we want them to see. The Kresh commander, a massive creature covered in natural armor, sent a message to the surface. It was simple and direct. Surrender or die. They gave the Valorians 1 hour to respond. High Counselor Pren appeared on the command center's screens. He looked tired but determined. Admiral, what is your recommendation? Do not respond at all. Silence will confuse them. The Kresh expect fear and pleading. Give them nothing. Pren nodded slowly. Very well, we will be silent. When the hour passed without a response, the Kresh began their attack. Landing craft descended through the atmosphere, carrying thousands of warriors to the surface. They expected to find a population cowering in terror, waiting to be slaughtered. They were wrong. The first wave of landing craft came down near the city of Valor Prime. The Kresh warriors emerged, weapons ready, prepared for an easy conquest. What they found instead were fortified positions manned by Valorians who did not run. The sound weapons that Tosk had designed tore through the Kresh ranks. The defensive shields that Lyra had created held against their attacks, and the tactics that the students had developed allowed small groups of Valorians to outmaneuver larger Kresh forces. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Valorians died by the hundreds, but so did the Kresh. The invaders had expected no resistance at all. Instead, they found a planet that fought back with everything it had. In the command center, Admiral Chen watched the reports coming in from across the planet. His face showed no emotion, but his mechanical hand gripped the table so hard that the metal bent. They are holding, Keth said, unable to believe what he was seeing. My people are actually holding. For now, Chen said, but the Kresh will adapt. They always do. We need to keep changing our tactics, stay one step ahead of them. He began issuing orders, shifting forces, coordinating the defense of an entire world. His experience from 50 years of warfare guided every decision. He knew what the Kresh would do before they did it, and he prepared the Valorians to counter each move. The battle raged for 3 days. The Kresh brought more troops, more weapons, more ships. They bombarded cities from orbit and sent wave after wave of warriors against Valorian positions, but they could not break through. Something unprecedented was happening. The Valorians, the peaceful people who had never fought a war, were standing against the most feared warriors in the galaxy. They were not winning, but they were not losing either. They were surviving. On the 4th day, the Kresh commander sent another message. This time, it was not a demand for surrender. It was a question. Who leads your forces? Who has taught the prey to fight like predators? Admiral Chen took the communication himself. He stood before the screen, his scarred face illuminated by the display. I am Admiral James Chen of Earth. I lead these forces. The Kresh commander's eyes widened. Chen, the human who defeated us at Proxima. The same. You are far from your world, human. You have no fleet here, no army. Only these weak creatures who have never known war. Chen smiled, though there was no warmth in it. These weak creatures have killed thousands of your warriors. They have held against your attacks for 4 days. They have done what no other species has done since Proxima. They have made the Kresh bleed. It does not matter. We have endless warriors. We will overwhelm them eventually. Perhaps, but how many will you lose? How many Kresh will die before you take this world? And when you finally succeed, what will be left? A ruined planet, a decimated army, and a reputation for being beaten by people who had never fought before. The Kresh commander was silent. Chen continued. I know your people, Commander. I know that you value strength above all else. What will the other Kresh fleets think when they hear that it took you months to conquer a peaceful world? What will they say about a commander who lost half his forces to prey? You try to manipulate me, human. I try to give you a reason to leave. Take your fleet and find easier targets. There are many worlds in the galaxy that will not fight back. Why waste your strength here? The commander growled, but he did not immediately reject the suggestion. Chen pressed his advantage. One more thing to consider. The human fleet knows I am here. They know what is happening on Valoria. If I die, they will come. Not to save this world, but to avenge me. They will hunt your fleet across the galaxy and destroy you completely. It was a bluff. The human fleet was weeks away, and there was no guarantee they would respond even if Chen died. But the Kresh commander did not know that. You ask us to retreat. The Kresh do not retreat. I ask you to choose your battles wisely. A smart warrior knows when to fight and when to seek better ground. Is this world worth the cost you are paying? The communication ended. The Kresh commander had given no answer, made no promises, but the attacks paused. For hours, the Kresh forces held their positions, neither advancing nor withdrawing. In the command center, everyone waited in tense silence. Keth stood beside Admiral Chen, watching the old man's face for any sign of what he was thinking. Will they leave? Keth asked quietly. I do not know, Chen admitted. The Kresh are proud and stubborn. They hate to show weakness, but they are also practical. They will calculate the cost and decide if it is worth paying. And if they decide it is worth it, then we fight until we cannot fight anymore. We make them pay for every meter of ground, every city, every life. We show them that the Valorians will never surrender, never give up. Even if we lose, we make sure they remember this world forever. Keth nodded slowly. A month ago, those words would have sounded like madness to him. Now, they sounded like the only option. The next morning, the Kresh fleet began to move. Every Valorian on the planet held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. Would the invaders launch a final, overwhelming assault? Would they bring down fire from orbit and burn the world to ash? The ships turned away from Valoria. One by one, they entered hyperspace and disappeared. The last to leave was the command ship. Before it jumped, the Kresh commander sent one final message. You have won this day, human, but the Kresh have long memories. We will return. Admiral Chen's response was simple. We will be ready. The command ship jumped away and the Valorian sky was clear again. For a long moment, no one in the command center spoke. Then Keth fell to his knees, tears streaming from all four of his eyes. We survived, he whispered. We actually survived. Around him, Valorian officers embraced each other, laughing and crying at the same time. The impossible had happened. A peaceful world had stood against the Kresh and made them leave. Admiral Chen did not celebrate. He lowered himself into a chair, and for the first time since arriving on Valoria, he looked old. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly. Admiral, Keth moved to his side, concerned. Are you well? Just tired, Chen said. It has been a long few days. But Keth could see it was more than tiredness. The strain of the past weeks had taken a terrible toll on the old man. He had pushed himself beyond what any human should have been able to endure, and now his body was demanding payment. You need medical attention, Keth said. Later. First, I want to see the sun rise over your world without Kresh ships in the sky. They helped the Admiral to the surface, to a hillside overlooking the city. The damage from the battle was visible everywhere. Buildings had been destroyed, streets cratered by weapons fire, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. But the city still stood. The people had survived. As the sun rose, Admiral Chen watched with a peaceful expression on his scarred face. It is a beautiful world, he said quietly, worth fighting for. We could not have done it without you, Keth said. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us that we were stronger than we believed. Chen shook his head. I only showed you the path. You walked it yourselves. The courage was always inside your people, waiting to be discovered. Word of the victory spread across the galaxy. A Deathworld human had led peaceful Valorians against the Kresh and forced them to retreat. It was news that changed everything. Other species who had lived in fear of the Kresh began to reach out to humanity. They wanted to learn what the Valorians had learned. They wanted to find the courage that could stand against impossible odds. The Galactic Defense Alliance, which had been small and weak, suddenly found itself flooded with applications for membership. Species that had rejected military cooperation now begged to join. The galaxy was waking up to a new truth. The Kresh could be stopped. Peaceful peoples could learn to defend themselves. Hope was not foolish. On Valoria, they built a statue of Admiral Chen in the center of the capital. It showed him as he had looked during the battle, standing firm with his scarred face and mechanical arm, wearing his old uniform covered in medals. At the base of the statue, they carved words from his speech to the council. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. The Admiral stayed on Valoria for another year, helping them build proper defenses and train a real military force. He was there when the first Valorian warships were launched, vessels designed by Valorian engineers using human tactics and alien creativity. They were unlike any ships the galaxy had ever seen. When his health finally failed him, Chen refused to leave. "I came here to help your people," he told Keth, who had become his closest friend. "I will finish what I started." He died peacefully, surrounded by the beings he had saved. His last words were simple: "Tell them they can win. Tell them to never give up." The Valorians honored him with the highest ceremony their culture had. They declared him a savior of the people, a title that had never been given to any outsider in 10,000 years of history. His ashes were scattered across the planet he had defended, so that a part of him would always remain on Valoria. Keth became the first Valorian military commander. He dedicated his life to carrying on Chen's work, training the next generation of warriors and spreading the lessons he had learned to other worlds. Years later, when the Kresh returned as they had promised, they found a very different galaxy waiting for them. The peaceful species they had once hunted with ease now stood together, trained and prepared. The Alliance fleet met them at the border, and among the commanders was Keth Varn, flying a warship named the Admiral Chen. The battle was fierce, but the outcome was never truly in doubt. The Kresh, who had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years, were defeated completely. Their empire collapsed, their fleet scattered, their threat ended forever. In the aftermath, historians would debate what had changed. Some said it was human military technology. Others said it was superior tactics and training. But those who had been there, who had seen the transformation with their own eyes, knew the truth. It was courage. One old man from a death world had shown a peaceful planet that they could stand and fight. That lesson had spread across the stars, inspiring species after species to find their own strength. The Kresh had faced not just armies, but something far more powerful. They had faced peoples who had discovered they were no longer willing to be prey. On the anniversary of the victory, Keth stood before the statue of Admiral Chen and addressed a crowd that filled the entire city square. Beings from dozens of species had come to pay their respects to the human who had changed the galaxy. "Admiral Chen once told me that humans were not always warriors," Keth said. "He said they were once prey, small and weak in a world of predators, but they refused to accept that fate. They chose to stand and fight, even when victory seemed impossible. That is what he taught us. Not how to wage war, but how to have courage, how to believe in ourselves when all hope seems lost." He looked up at the statue, at the face of his friend carved in stone. The Kresh called Earth a death world, a place of chaos and violence. They were right, but what they did not understand is that chaos creates strength. Struggle creates courage. The humans are what they are because their world tried to destroy them every day, and every day they chose to survive. Admiral Chen gave us that gift. He showed us that we could be more than we thought we were. He believed in us when we did not believe in ourselves. And because of one old warrior from a death world, An entire galaxy found the courage to stand together against the darkness. The crowd cheered, a sound that echoed across the city and into the peaceful Valorian sky. Somewhere, Keth believed, Admiral Chen was watching and smiling. The veteran warrior had defied the deathworld that made him, and his courage had inspired not just one planet, but an entire galaxy. That was the legacy of humanity. That was the gift of the deathworld. And the galaxy would never forget it.